We're about to begin the service for Mrs. Gertrude Gerstein. Officiating our service today will be Rabbi Adam Shalom from Kol Hadash Humanistic Congregation.
Good morning, or for those overseas, good afternoon. Gertrude Gerstein is gone, and the world is different today. We know that this is the natural way of the world, that everything that lives will eventually die, and that 93 years is a pretty good run. We may know that intellectually, but we are still sad to have lost someone who was so important to our lives, someone who loved us and someone we still love. Today is our opportunity to affirm the fullness of life, to remember her with joy and love, and to remember her with tears. There is wisdom in the Jewish tradition that speaks of this reality of life, and facing reality was something that Gita did her whole life. And so I'll read this passage from the book of Ecclesiastes, first in Hebrew and then in English. L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chafetz tachat hashamayim, et laledet ve'et lamut, et latat ve'et la'kor natua, et la'arog ve'et lirpo, et lifrot ve'et livnot, et livkot ve'et lischok, et tzfod ve'et rokod, et la'ashlich avanim ve'et knos avanim, et lachavok ve'et lirchok mechabek, et levakesh ve'et le'abed, et lishmor ve'et la'ashlich, et likroa ve'et litpor, et lachashot ve'et ledaber, et le'ehol ve'et lisno, et milchama ve'et shalom. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. This balance of all the pieces of life, knowing the right time or what to do and when, I feel that speaks to the life that Gita led and the family that she created. I talked with Gita's family a few days ago, and I found a thread running through her life story. You can retell a life story in many ways. You can find many different themes, but this one seemed to pop up again and again, and it was the theme of food. She was always a good cook. The family remembered her raisin rock cookies, her chicken soup with matzo balls, her brisket, which her grandson Andrew in particular grew up loving to eat, though now as a vegan he will not eat. What is the recipe for a good life? Gita certainly had one, so maybe we can learn from her choices for our own lives. Ingredient number 1. Start with good, fresh ingredients from where you started, your family. Just like the grocery store where Gita grew up. Gita was born Gertrude Berzon in Duluth, Minnesota in 1928, where she was raised with her older brother Sam by her parents Anna and Abe. Anna came from Poland and Abe from Lithuania, and while they were very Americanized with a minimal, if any, accent in English, they spoke Yiddish as well, which is probably why they called her Gita. In Yiddish, Gita means good one. Git is good. Gita's children would hear geh schlafen, go to sleep, from their grandparents at the end of a babysitting night. Now, Anna and Abe also spoke many other languages from Eastern Europe. It was useful in serving their customers in Duluth from Eastern and Northern Europe. When Gita wasn't attending Harriet Beecher Stowe Grammar School, where she graduated at the top of her class, Gita helped working in the store. Abe and Anna owned the building with the store on the main floor and their apartment above it. Gita's family was one of the few Jewish families in Duluth. Her father did attend a synagogue to pray regularly, and while they didn't buy kosher meat, they didn't eat anything obviously treif or not kosher. She did enjoy eating at Chinese restaurants as well, however. Gita remembers taking matzah for school lunches during Passover, and many of her classmates had no idea what matzah was. But Jewishness was one of the basic ingredients of her life. She and Marvin were synagogue members through their children's bar mitzvah and confirmation. She lit yahrzeit memorial candles for her parents, and there were regular family gatherings for Rosh Hashanah dinner, for Hanukkah, and for Passover. Those would be the settings for her latkes, her salmon loaf, her kugel, her rice noodle casserole or spaghetti in a 9x13 pan. Jan got the last one regularly for her birthday, except for the last couple of years. And of course, her excellent brownies and stuffing. Gita was one of a dozen first cousins. Her mother had many siblings, and there was even a set of double cousins where a brother and a sister married a sister and a brother from the same family. Like Gita, her parents were very down-to-earth people. In 1955, she and her future husband Marvin took the train to visit them in Duluth, one of many visits to that city. Abe picked them up in his station wagon that he used to deliver groceries. On their way to the apartment and the store in West Duluth, he stopped in at a meat supplier to see about an order, right when a truckload of pigs was being uploaded and unloaded onto a ramp into the slaughterhouse. Abe and Anna were down-to-earth people in a down-to-earth profession in a down-to-earth town, and those raw ingredients had a lot to do with Gita, who was, you guessed it, a down-to-earth person herself. That was obvious to Marvin from the first time he met her in Chicago, another event that involved food. The second ingredient to a good life: choose what you like and enjoy it like nobody's watching. After graduating from the University of Minnesota, Gita went to work as an X-ray technician, first in Spokane, Washington, where she moved with a friend from Duluth who was a nurse, and then in Chicago with another friend from Duluth. She worked at Michael Reese and Mount Sinai hospitals and then with private practice doctors, and she was good at her work. Once when Marvin had hurt his foot, she took an X-ray and evaluated it herself for him. She took pride in her work as an X-ray technician, and Marvin was very impressed with her. The first date was a blind date. Marvin's friend had a date with Gita's friend Esther, and Marvin went along even though initially he didn't really want to. There was a surprise March snowstorm they had to deal with, so rather than go out to dinner, Gita suggested they just come over to eat in the women's apartment. Again, no pretense, come and see where we live. Marvin was impressed at her lack of pretense, her direct honesty with who she was. As he said to her later, "I had known many girls, but she was a woman." The four of them had dinner at a small card table in the small apartment, and after dinner, someone suggested playing bridge, which Gita had played a lot in college, and Marvin did not know how to play at all. With great patience, Gita came over behind him in her yellow short-sleeved cashmere sweater, and she leaned on his shoulder very intimately, totally naturally, to help him play his hand. After bridge, they decided they should watch a dramatic TV show with a captivating story, and here's where the food came in directly. During a particularly dramatic scene in the show, when no one was talking because the story was so engrossing, Gita reached down and took a potato chip and took a loud bite. Choose what you like and enjoy it like nobody's watching. Well, fortunately for Marvin, and I guess for Lee and Jan too, Marvin was something she liked. Their second date was at the Tip Top Tap at the Allerton Hotel, where they drank Moscow Mules and talked up a storm. Back in the car after dinner, Marvin kissed her and she kissed him back, and that was the beginning of their love story. They saw each other all the time, during the week and every weekend, often spending the day by the lake near Belmont, sometimes with friends and sometimes just the two of them. And true to form, without pretense, one night Marvin asked her on the couch, "Will you marry me?" And she answered, "Mm-hmm." And that was that. They were married on October 16th, 1955, and made a loving partnership for the next 66 years. The next ingredient to a good life? Take things as they come and find joy in simple things. Over their 66 years together, Marvin can't remember her raising her voice in anger, not even yelling at another driver. Even if he were angry, she would just let it go and stay steady. Now, her daughter Jan remembers it a bit differently, reenacting the mother-daughter conflicts that Gita herself had had with her mother at times. In general, though, Gita was just sensible. She accepted and dealt with reality. These are essential characteristics of a good cook because sometimes it just doesn't rise. And it's helpful to living a good life. She did what was needed with no nonsense or drama. She relied on her abundant common sense, and she always kept her head. Gita also had a great and subtle sense of humor. Even nearing the end, when she was very ill, the little jokes kept coming. And she had simple pleasures: reading a good book, seeing a good play, walking through the Chicago Botanic Garden or visiting the Art Institute, following the news and the stock market, doing a crossword puzzle, eating outside at restaurants in warm weather. Today may be the last day of this year that is warm enough to do that, but it is a beautiful day today. And these are things that many of us now are getting used to as we eat outdoors more and more. She spent time with good friends. She visited her family. It doesn't have to be fancy to be meaningful or to make your life better. Jan remembered going to Duluth every summer, visiting the pier on Lake Superior and watching the iron ore ships pass through the lift bridge, feeding the seagulls with bread, or going to Bridgman's for ice cream. Marvin and Gita had their challenges and heartbreak starting their family, but eventually Jan and then Lee arrived. Marvin and Gita were equal partners. Even if she was the homemaker, she was also in charge of their finances and their investments, reading the Wall Street Journal and Barron's to make sensible decisions. Jan remembers her as a constant presence that made them feel secure and safe and loved. Even if she did also read them stories and play with them from time to time, and she could be fun to bake with, she took care of them in a day-to-day way that became part of the scenery. There were things that could get on your nerves. She wanted what she wanted the way she wanted it. But she also made her children feel loved every single day. She did what was needed for the family and was understanding if at times they were more focused on themselves than others, as teenagers can be. There were special moments, of course. The black cat cake for Halloween, the 4th of July cake decorated like a flag with blueberries and strawberries and white frosting. Upon request, she could also touch her nose with the tip of her tongue, which she would do to get people happy. Lee remembers a desperate desire once to go to Disneyland or Disney World, even to the point of asking to transfer to the Walt Disney School in Chicago. As Lee put it, she actually took that totally ridiculous request at least somewhat seriously. Gita was mostly at home after the kids were born, but sometimes she did fill in work with x-rays, and once in a while she would bring the kids along with her as she delivered her x-ray films. There were also outings to museums and zoos and plays, or shopping on State Street at Marshall Fields or Carson Peary Scott, complete with white gloves. And lunch at Wimpy's for hamburgers, or Lee also remembers being initiated into the staple lunch of grilled cheese, a milkshake, and fries at a coffee shop. Maybe a stop at Fannie Mae or Dutch Mill for a bag of candy. Maybe also a trip to Croak and Brentano's or the 3rd floor of Marshall Fields to look at a book, or maybe buy the latest Nancy Drew mystery. Sponsoring a love of reading was something that she was clearly willing to invest in. She herself was a lifelong and voracious reader, reading all kinds of fiction and all the way up until the last few weeks of her life. Something else special about their relationship, it makes sense with her practical and realistic approach to life, Gita had a good relationship with her children as adults. She changed with the times and had a mature relationship as they got mature. Lee said he will miss having lunch with Gita and Marvin as friends, as well as parents. He also said that he's glad that they're nice to him now because he was a jerk to them when he was going through puberty. But they were able to shrug it all off and move forward. They were also stalwart supports during Lee's long illness in the hospital and rehab facility, for which he remains very grateful. Another ingredient for a good life, which is also an asset for a cook, be open to new experiences and ideas. Gita enjoyed traveling all over the United States, also back to familiar places in Duluth or a family vacation home in Wisconsin, or for a while Palm Springs in the winter. She and Marvin also traveled to many parts of the world. A trip to England for Jan's high school high school graduation, and that was their first overseas trip when they were in their 50s. Also a major trip to Australia, New Zealand with Lee and John, and to Paris and Italy and Hawaii for their 50th anniversary, and then to Glasgow to visit their grandson when he was in college. Gita was also very open when her children found people to build their own lives with. Even during the last weeks when she was not so lucid, she complimented Lee's choice of John and how lucky he was to have found him 30 years ago. She loved John and he was a part of her life. As just one example, he provided excellent tech support. Gita also welcomed Jan's husband, Bobby, who grew up very far from Jewish Duluth and Chicago, both geographically and culturally. But she loved him too, especially when he helped her with crossword puzzles. She wanted the best for her children to be happy and useful, and these partners supported them in becoming both. And there's no better new experience than becoming a grandparent of Andrew, even at age 71. She was never scared of taking care of the baby, despite her age. and she was happy to pick him up from daycare and take him on outings to the zoo or to museums or the park, or just to have what she called an apple party, slicing up an apple and eating it together. There was the time that Andrew was just starting to talk, and his mouth was open. She popped in a little piece of Hershey's chocolate bar, and his eyes opened wide with this new discovery. Gita was a real presence in Andrew's life, even helping him with his bar mitzvah project to deliver food through the Council for Jewish Elderly. At the time, Jan thought, isn't she elderly? She's delivering food to other people. Andrew recalls staying overnight at their house, enjoying a big meal with mashed potatoes and peas and salmon patties, which he enjoyed not only because of the food, but also because of the time he got to spend with Gita, and he appreciated how much effort went into cooking those meals, how much love it represented. When Andrew was ready for university, she made jokes about him going to the University of Illinois rather than overseas. She knew that he wanted to go travel the world, but he knew that she was saying, I'll miss you, and I want to see you, in her own way. And she did manage to get there in her first year, touring the campus and art museums together. Gita was intellectually curious and connected to people her whole life. She modeled beautifully how to age with grace. Even in her older years, she kept up with popular culture and went to current movies, not just watching classics from her heyday over and over. She was present in the moment. She wanted to know what was going on. She was always engaged in current events and politics, though even then there was a kind of bubble. She said once that she voted twice for Adlai Stevenson, and she couldn't understand why he didn't win because no one she knew voted for Ike. Jan remembers her drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette when she quit in 1972, while reading Life magazine, or driving listening to News Radio 78, now 780, or tying up the phone talking with her friends when Jan wanted to talk with her friends on the phone. The last ingredient to a good life: leave them wanting more. Even in her 90s, Gita was eager for more life, and she had a strong will to live. And she had lived well for most of those years. She went to Duluth for her 90th birthday and visited her grandson Andrew in Scotland. It did get harder, but she soldiered on, ever practical, ever determined. She still wanted to know who won the World Series. And she was with the family, mentally, cognitively sharp until just before the end. Even in the last couple of years, as her world narrowed, she could still go to the corner bakery to sit outside reading a book, and she could still be aware of the needs of others. Even when she was sick in the hospital, she asked about Lee's cat Oscar, who was also sick. Overall, she had been relatively healthy. She was hospitalized for a scheduled operation in her 40s, and then not again until she was 89 years old. She had a life filled with family, friends, interests, and contentment. And here we are, still left wanting more. Remember these ingredients to a good life. Good relationships with your family, both as children and adults. Choose what you like and enjoy it like nobody's watching. Take things as they come. Find joy in simple things. Be open to new experiences and ideas. Leave them wanting more. We celebrate today the life of a person who lived sharp and aware into her 90s, who did well physically most of those years, someone who loved their family and who was loved by them, who was engaged in the world of public affairs and friends and neighbors, someone who had both exciting new experiences and familiar beloved places returned to again and again. Where can any of us sign up for that? Today is sad. It's not tragic, but it's still sad. And we will have in the future new opportunities to remember her in new ways. And so I want to close this eulogy with a short poem by Merritt Malloy entitled Epitaph. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men who wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. At this time, we commit Gita's remains to the earth. They will be here in this family plot. As we see the casket being lowered, I invite us to reflect silently on this transition. This can be one of the more difficult moments for a service, but it's also an opportunity where words fail and connection to family and connection to Gita is perhaps most important. And so I invite us to reflect silently for a few moments. Gita has found peace. We hope that her family finds peace as well. In keeping with Jewish tradition, but in a modern flavor, we've chosen today to include a humanistic Kaddish, an adaptation of the traditional text that in this case praises peace, peace in the world, peace in our hearts, the peace that Gita has found and the peace we hope for her family as well. The family who are here, I'd invite you to stand for a moment. You have the text of this on the back of your service folder. If you want to try the Aramaic, you're welcome to, or we can say the English together after I read the traditional words. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shloma ba'alma. Nivra shloma chirutana v'namlich malchute b'chayechona v'yomechona v'chay dechol Beit Yisrael v'agala v'izman kari v'imru shalom. Yehei shlomo rabba mevarach le'olam u'le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shloma ba'alma brichu. Le'ele min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nehmata de'amiran ba'alma v'imru shalom. Yehei shlomo rabba v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru shalom. Na'aseh shalom ba'olam aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru shalom. If you want to join me. Wonderful is peace in the world. Let us create a peaceful world and let us establish its kingdom now and in the future. May peace come upon us to bless our lives. May we always continue to honor peace in the world, even though no praise can equal the importance of its reality. May peace and life prevail for us and for all Israel. Let us work to create peace here on earth for all people, and let us say, peace, shalom. For those family gathered here today, there is one last step to take, and that is to cast a shovelful or 2 or 3 of earth upon the resting place. It is a way to connect us to this space, to leave a piece of ourselves here. We know that Gita is as close as our power to remember her, and can happen at any time, in any place. Yet there is something special about having a particular location where we know that we participated in this ritual. and it is traditional for us to return the shovel to the earth so each person themselves may take upon themselves the mitzvah, the good deed of honoring the dead through this tradition. And so I invite our family to step forward as we close our service. And so now I invite you, wherever you are, online or here, to find someone you care about and to embrace them. Thank you.
Our service here is concluded. The live stream will also conclude. Memorial contributions to the American Cancer Society can be made both in the folder here or also online. Thank you. Condolences to the family.